So recently I've been reading this book by Aristotle called the Nicomachean Ethics, and in this book I came across this really interesting idea. It is basically about how to function properly in life. And as in this diagram you can see, the middle is the mean, which is the virtue, which is where we want to be. And then on the right we have excess, on the left we have deficiency. So if you're on the axis, you're doing too much. And if you're on the deficiency side, you're not doing too much. You're doing too little, I guess. And when I came across this idea, the number one thing that came to my mind was ambition and hard work. I just felt like you can't be in the mean, can't be in the middle anymore. Um, with ambition and hard work to achieve success in today's times. And this is what I'm gonna look at today. I think I came up with some nice diagrams and some nice formulas to tackle that problem, and I think it makes sense, and that's what I'm going to talk about. I want to start with a personal example. I was training MMA for a while, and I remember one month I decided to go really hard. I was definitely in the excess, training 6 days a week, and I was training really hard, not just in the MMA gym but also outside in a regular gym. And what happened was, I think I did do well in the gym, but I got injured at the end of the month, and then I had to sit out for about 7-8 months, and so I just lost all that time. It didn't work out for me at all. So through this example, I just want to say that I'm not against the intermediate or the virtue, which is the mean. I think it's the perfect spot to be, but just given the states of our lives today, it might not be possible. So I just came up with another diagram here. So as you can see on the right, we have an arrow pointing down to slightly above intermediate level. So going back to the previous example, you might want to be at this point to the right when, let's say, maybe you have a fight coming up if you're a fighter, or something else if you're something else. And it makes sense to go a little bit beyond the intermediate, right? And then after the fight, you can drop below the intermediate a little bit. Or let's say you go to a vacation or something if you're a businessman. And if you combine these and just do an average, and then you'll figure out that you actually go right back to the middle at the mean. So it all comes back to the mean. So it's just that our lives these days are just up and down, so you might have to go above and beyond a little bit. And next up is the formula that I came up with. So we have V here, which is virtue, output or success, and then we have I. Virtue is equal to I minus the absolute value of D. I is the intermediate level, and then D is your deviation. Ideally, you'd like your deviation to be 0, and then the second formula down there basically says that if your deviation is not 0, there would be some type of consequence, which is what the addition of another D at the end signifies. And then basically I have a little example here. So let's say I should mention that everyone has different intermediate. So your intermediate might be different than mine. You might be able to train 7 days a week, 10 hours a day, who knows. But let's say the value of your intermediate is 10, right? And in this first example, we have your deviation as -3, which basically means you're slacking. And then in the formula we have the absolute value of D, which basically means it doesn't matter if it's a -3 or whatever 3, it's going to be 3. And then for virtue we have 10, which is the intermediate value, -3, which is your deviation. You're kind of slacking, you're only training 4 days a week. And that gives us a value of 7, which is not ideal. It should be 10, which is your intermediate value, so that means you're less virtuous, or your output is less than what it could be. The next example we have is you're overworking, so now we have a deviation of +3. And as I said in the previous example, the absolute value of d doesn't matter if it's -3 or +3, is going to be 3. So again, for a virtue we have 10 minus 3 here, it gives us 7. Again, you're doing too much, you're training too much, you're at a risk, and you're overworking yourself. You might be able to work 10-12 hours a day today, but it's going to take away from you tomorrow. Your output's going to be low. You might work in the same hours, but you will not be as productive as you would be. And then eventually you might burn out, and then it could be months or weeks before you reach the same level of output again. So even though the direction changes, it could be to the right, it could be to the left. Like you can imagine a graph, like a curved graph with mean in the middle. So you can go to the right, to the left, and the virtue is gonna reduce. It doesn't matter where you go. So if you stay right in the middle, that's where the sweet spot is. And that's pretty much all that I got today. I'm still reading this book, and if you guys have any other recommendations that you think are maybe related to this book or this idea, please let me know. And thanks a lot. That's it.